The attic laboratory of Chateau Laurent maintains a strict ambient temperature of 16 degrees Celsius, the ideal environment for biochemical analysis. I stand before the lens of a high-precision electron microscope, my fingers adjusting the focus on a single cellular membrane of infected grape. Outside the thick glass, the heavy autumn fog of Bordeaux rolls over the valley, swallowing the endless rows of old vines in a gray, silent, unyielding shroud. My pulse is 61 beats per minute, stable, absolute. I do not look back at that evening with the heat of a victim. Victims bleed emotions. Professionals. Audit systems. In the world of Grand Cru Classé, a single grape infected with degenerative, uncalibrated mold must be severed from the vine immediately to protect the entire harvest. If you hesitate, the necrosis spreads through the tissue of the whole estate. Human variables are calculated exactly the same way. When my daughter-in-law, Chloe, publicly converted my 1982 vintage masterpiece, the final surviving bottle of my late wife's personal blend, into a commercial gimmick to rinse the glasses of internet influencers, my respiration did not alter by a single fraction. I was not angry. Anger is an inefficient friction, a sign of internal systemic breakdown. Instead, I simply opened the sovereign registry of the family leather ledger and prepared the global biochemical pruning process. The grand salon of the chateau was an exercise in synthetic aristocracy. Thousands of imported crystal chandeliers, the loud, uneducated chatter of the new money elite. Chloe stood at the absolute epicenter of the gallery, her haute couture gown costing more than the entire annual harvest budget of an independent grower. Beside her stood Matthew, my son, a man whose spine had been systematically dissolved by 6 years of psychological manipulation. Around them, the managing directors of the largest distribution syndicates in Western Europe. They were here to buy into the illusion. Chloe held the microphone, her face carrying the flawless, calculated glaze of a professional social climber. She gestured toward me as I entered the room, my boots covered in the raw, dark, sticky resin of the late-season harvest, my khaki work clothes smelling of damp earth and fermentation. My husband's father belongs to the manual past of this estate, Chloe announced to the investors, her voice amplification cutting through the room like a steel blade disguised in velvet. A simple laborer from an older, unrefined era of physical extraction. As his cognitive capacity has entered a prolonged, irreversible decline, our new digital marketing collective has taken control of the brand. We have bypassed his primitive methods to elevate the name Laurent into a pure, minimalist, luxury ecosystem. The billionaires raised their glasses, a collective murmur of superficial, polite, disgust directed at my boots. Matthew looked at the floor. He said nothing. Then, my 8-year-old granddaughter, Inez, walked into the light of the central hearth. In her small, trembling hands, she was cradling a small, weathered walnut wood hom, the tool chest of my late wife. Inside were the original copper hydrometers, the handwritten fermentation logs from 1974. The coin of every single vintage that made this valley worth billions. Chloe saw the smudge of charcoal on the child's hands. She saw the old, scratched wood interrupting the pristine white marble aesthetic of her display. The corporate registry, in her eyes, fractured into pure, raw social terror. She intercepted the child before I could step across the floor. She did not ask for the box. With a sharp, violent, predatory wrench, she tore the antique walnut chest from Inez's fingers. Do not bring your filthy, grease-stained rack Rui into this exhibition, Chloe hissed, her whisper loud enough to vibrate across the nearest rows of crystal glasses. This chateau is an international luxury asset. It does not accommodate the clutter of dead peasants. With a smooth, deliberate swing of her arm, she threw the ancestral walnut chest directly into the roaring fire of the great stone fireplace. The dry, 40-year-old wood ignited instantly. The ancient paper logs, the records of my wife's life, turned into gray, volatile ash before the child's eyes. Inez did not scream. She shrank back against my legs, her shoulders pulling inward, making herself small in the exact way a child does when she realizes her safety has been liquidated. Chloe turned to the private security detail at the main doors. "Remove this old man and the child to the wet weather warehouse at the edge of the property immediately," she commanded, adjusting her diamond necklace. "We must preserve the elite atmosphere of the Bordeaux registry." The security guards closed in on my position. I did not alter my posture by a single millimeter. I did not raise my voice. To shout, to demand validation from an inferior mechanism, is to admit that their presence has leverage over you. This room possessed zero leverage. I reached into my pocket. I withdrew a clean, white silk handkerchief. Slowly, deliberately, I wiped a small smudge of tantro from the sleeve of my jacket. I did not look at the fire. The box was wood, the logs were paper. The True de San, the actual intellectual code of the Grand Cru, was locked safely inside the biochemical architecture of my own mind. I looked directly into Chloe's eyes. I did not offer a curse. I did not offer a threat. I simply observed the configuration of her face with a deep, absolute clinical pity. The pity of a master scientist looking at a cell that has already begun to rot from the inside out. I took my granddaughter's cold hand in mine. "Come, Inez," I said, my voice a flat, horizontal line that froze the entire conversation in the room. We turned our backs on the billionaires. We walked down the long, silent, marble aisle alone, stepping out of the grand doors and into the freezing downpour of the Bordeaux Dong. Chloe believes her contracts are finalized. She believes that by burning the paper, she has erased the owner of the soil. She is entirely wrong. She has just introduced a terminal, catastrophic, infection to a highly volatile system. The mainspring of the estate has been wound to its absolute limit. The countdown has officially begun. The compression is absolute. The old stone cottage at the edge of the valley does not register the panic of the modern world. No digital screens, no public statements to the press, no desperate legal countersuits. True leverage is silent. I sit in the subterranean darkness of the old cellar, where the air is thick with the scent of wet limestone, cold earth, and ancient wood. Outside, the Bordeaux Dong batters the slate roof. Inside, there is only the rhythmic sweebot of 200 barrels of Grand Cru, fermenting in the dark. A steady, automated, biochemical heartbeat. The sound of sugars transforming into alcohol, slowly, under absolute pressure. My silence is not a retreat. It is a calculated clinical isolation of the system. When you cut off the signal, the parasite inside the machine begins to starve. 41 years, I have lived within the microscopic borders of this thunglung. I look at the palms of my hands in the pale green luminescence of the fermentation terminal. The skin is permanently etched, scarred by the harsh acidity of the limestone soil and the chemical burns of sulfur cleansing agents. The white, jagged mark across my left index finger, the memory of a bursting steel barrel hoop from the winter of 1989. I spent 4 decades using advanced biochemistry to tame the most stubborn, volatile clones of Cabernet Sauvignon. I built an invisible, unassailable, financial fortress through independent Swiss asset management, long before Chloe ever learned how to pronounce the name Laurent. They see an old man in a stained leather apron. They do not see the architect who owns the very soil beneath their expensive shoes. With a steady stroke of my hand, I log into the encrypted Swiss offshore registry. I activate the comprehensive forensic audit. Every uncertified bottle she shipped, every synthetic marketing ledger she falsified, line by line. The trap is set. The architecture of her absolute soup dough is fully calibrated. Across the valley, at the chateau, the fermentation of ruin is turning into lethal heat. The UK distribution syndicate has just issued an ultimatum. 24 hours. Their quality assurance team has realized that the new €20 million shipment lacks the mandatory digital validation signature of the maître d'échelle. Without my cryptographic code, those 500,000 bottles are legally classified as uncertified table wine, valueless liquid. At the same moment, the bank debt for her superficial renovations has reached its deadline. The collection notifications are flashing on her devices. The panic has turned her rabid. In a frantic, desperate, psychological maneuver, she has spent the last 12 hours gaslighting my son. She has forced Matthew to sign an emergency psychiatric guardianship petition, a malicious, fraudulent document, claiming I am suffering from advanced, toxic, home rule dementia. Their objective is simple: lock me away in a restricted Swiss care facility and seize the master cryptographic seal of the estate. They think they are playing a game of corporate strategy. They do not realize they are trapped inside a vacuum. Midnight brings the peak of the storm. The rain falls in vertical, punishing sheets. Outside the heavy oak doors of my stone cellar, headlights cut through the black mist. A car door slams. Through the security monitor, I observe him, Matthew, my only son. His designer wool coat is soaked, clinging to his trembling shoulders like a wet shroud. He drops to his knees on the sharp gravel of the courtyard. His hands are shaking so violently he cannot steady his phone against the wood of the door. Beside my cup of tea, the device begins to vibrate. A sharp, urgent, terrifying hum that echoes against the stone walls. The screen illuminates, casting a dull, blue, clinical reflection across my ancient ledger. I press the speaker button. I do not say a word. Beau, I beg you, please. His voice fractures through the speaker, weeping, suffocated by the sound of the thunder outside. Chloe is going to leave me. She is taking Inez to Paris. The UK buyers are threatening criminal fraud charges if the shipment isn't validated. The bank is seizing the chateau doors in the morning. The AI has locked our accounts. Only your master's signature can override the audit. Save my name, Beau. Save my honor. I look at the blue screen. I do not type a single digit. I do not offer a reassuring lie. I lift my porcelain cup. The tea is warm, the steam rising slowly before dissipating into the dark, sterile air of the cellar. I take a slow, deliberate sip. Then, with a perfectly steady hand, I reach out and flip the phone face down onto the oak table, cutting the audio, leaving him alone with the fury of the storm, returning the room to the perfect, unyielding tick of the chronometer. They spent my tolerance as if it were an infinite credit line. They crushed their own roots, then begged the gatekeeper to open an escape route when their ship began to sink. Too late. The pressure inside the barrel has exceeded the structural capacity of the wood. The valves have locked. The latent phase is officially over. 20 million euros. The gold-plated fountain pen hovers a single millimeter above the parchment contract. Inside the mirror gallery of Chateau Laurent, the air is thick with the scent of white truffles and expensive perfumes. Every major wine distributor from London to New York is watching. Chloe stands at the high podium, her diamond-encrusted dress shimmering under the glare of the flashbulbs. Her face is illuminated by the massive 80-foot, 8K LED installation behind her. She smiles. The smile of a predator who believes she has successfully suffocated her prey. She lowers the nib to sign the document. The document that will legally strip the Laurent heritage from its soil. Then, the heavy, cast-iron doors of the Grand Salon are thrown open. The sound rings out like a gunshot against the marble walls. The security guards do not move. They cannot move. I step across the threshold. I am no longer wearing the muddy harvest boots. I wear the ceremonial, crimson silk robes of the Jurade de Saint-Émilion, the highest, ancient, unassailable order of the Bordeaux hierarchy. Beside me, the senior chief inspectors of the Institut National de l'Origine et de la Qualité, and 6 agents from the Federal Economic Crimes Division of the French police. Chloe's pen stops. The social registry in her eyes fractures into absolute white-hot panic. I do not engage in an argument with her. To debate with a thief is to acknowledge her legitimacy. I walk down the center aisle, my crimson robes sweeping against the stone. I step onto the central stage, straight to the master terminal connecting the chateau to the global wine registries. From the inner pocket of my robe, I withdraw the secure cryptographic hardware drive taken from my late wife's chest. I slot it into the server. The blue laser initialization flashes once. Instantly, the massive 8K LED walls behind the podium fracture. The elegant marketing graphics vanish, replaced by a blinding, sterile, blood-red warning system, AOC de classification. Invalide liquidation. The official legal decree flashes before the entire French aristocracy. With a single mechanical execution, the digital security seal of our estate is revoked. 500,000 bottles of premium Grand Cru stored in her warehouses, stripped of their appellation, declassified by the state, transformed in a single second into anonymous, uncertified, €2 table wine. Her €20 million contract is now a stack of worthless paper. But the screen does not stop. The ledger automatically scrolls down. Projected in massive, high-definition text appears the encrypted audio file of her gaslighting my son, her forged signatures on the psychiatric asylum petition, and the forensic audit of her hidden, fraudulent bank debts. The room drops into a suffocating, dead silence. Chloe collapses. Her custom-designed gown hits the marble floor, soaking instantly in a puddle of expensive champagne from an overturned glass. I step to the edge of the stage. I look down at her, kneeling in the wet waste of her own vanity. My voice is a frozen, horizontal line of absolute, clinical judgment. You wanted to erase my name from the label to play the role of a high society lady. Chloe, I say. The words vibrate against the crystal chandeliers. Do you truly believe you can define your status using those artificial filters on your social media accounts? No. I adjust the gold insignia on my crimson lapel. The true status of a family lies deep within the terroir, in the crystallization of soil and blood. Over hundreds of years beneath the earth, it does not exist in the shiny superficial labels you print to hide your emptiness. You chose to burn the physical legacy of my wife, so I will strip away your entire time inside this castle. The heritage audit is officially concluded. You are fired. The lead British investor steps back from the table. With a slow, disgusted motion, he rips the unsigned contract in half and drops the pieces onto her head. Matthew stands beside the podium. The psychological fog in his eyes clears completely. He looks at his wife on the floor as if looking at a dangerous, alien infection. He reaches down, slides the ancestral gold signet watch off his wrist, and places it gently back into my palm. He does not look back at her. He takes my granddaughter Inez by her small hand, and they step behind my crimson robe. The economic police officers step into the light of the hearth. They lift Chloe by her arms, her makeup smeared with ash and running mascara, her diamonds rattling against the stone. They drag her screaming, weeping, broken body across the marble salon, and throw her out into the mud of the torrential Bordeaux storm. I pick up a single clean crystal glass from the display. I pour a measure of the true, uncorrupted, 1982 vintage. I lift the glass toward the remaining assembly. They bow their heads in absolute, silent submission to the master of the soil. The Maasat has been eliminated. The system has been returned to its baseline. The DSAN has been completely purified.